Amara had always known that silence could save a person's life. She had learned this the hard way, living inside a palace where every word was watched, every step was noted, and every smile had to be perfectly timed. She was 24 years old when she first arrived at the grand estate of King Nwosu, a sprawling compound in the hills outside Abuja, with tall iron gates, armed guards at every entrance, and rooms so large that her own voice echoed back at her. From the outside, people called it a palace. From the inside, Amara called it a cage. She had not chosen to be there. Her father, a quiet man with a failing business and too many debts, had made an arrangement, the kind of arrangement that men in powerful circles still made behind closed doors. King Nwosu had wanted a companion, someone educated and poised and young. Her father had wanted relief, and so, without anyone asking Amara what she wanted, her life had been handed over like a business contract. At first, she told herself to be patient. She told herself that powerful men were sometimes just lonely men, and that perhaps things would improve. But King Nwosu was not lonely. He was controlling. He decided what she wore, who she spoke to, when she left a room, and what she was allowed to read. He never raised his hand against her. He did not need to. His words and his silences were enough. He could look at her across a dinner table and make her feel completely invisible, and then, minutes later, parade her in front of guests as though she were his greatest treasure. She was not a treasure. She was a decoration. For nearly 3 years, Amara lived inside that life. She smiled at the right moments. She wore the right clothes. She said very little and observed everything, and while everyone around her believed she had settled into her role, Amara was doing something else entirely. She was making a plan. It was a palace maid named Rosaline who made the plan possible. Rosaline was a small woman in her 40s, quiet as a shadow, who had worked at the estate for over a decade. She had seen other young women come and go, and she recognized something in Amara's eyes, not defeat, but calculation. One afternoon, while folding laundry in a back room, Rosaline pressed a small folded paper into Amara's palm without a single word. Amara did not open it until she was alone. Inside was a phone number, a name, and 3 words written in small, careful handwriting. When you are ready. Amara was ready 4 months later. She chose a night when King Nwosu was hosting a large state dinner, his attention fully occupied by politicians and business partners and the performance of his own importance. While music played in the grand hall, and glasses clinked, and laughter rolled through the corridors, Amara packed a small bag. She put in only what mattered: a change of clothes, her personal documents, a small amount of money she had quietly saved over many months, and the burner phone that Rosaline had left, folded inside a pillowcase 2 weeks earlier. She walked through the back of the palace the way she had practiced in her mind 100 times. She passed the kitchen corridor, turned left at the laundry room, and slipped through a side door that Rosaline had made sure to leave unlocked. The night air hit her face like cold water. She did not run. Running draws attention. She walked, calmly, steadily, to the far edge of the compound's outer wall, where a section of the gate opened to a small unpaved road. She stepped through it. And then she disappeared. She took a bus to Lagos that same night, sitting in the back with her bag on her lap and her eyes on the dark road ahead. In Lagos, she connected to a bus going south, and by the time the sun came up, she was already across the border into Benin Republic. 3 days later, using a contact that Rosaline's note had led her to, she crossed into Ghana and arrived in Accra with nothing but what she carried and the careful, stubborn hope that her life was not yet finished. The first months were brutal. She had no network, no local name, and no history that she could safely share. She stayed in a women's shelter near Kaneshi Market, sleeping in a room with 5 other women, waking early each morning to help with chores in exchange for her place. She called herself Mara Asante, a name she had chosen quietly on the bus, a name that felt like a new skin. But Amara was not an ordinary woman. She had studied economics at university before her life was interrupted. She understood financial systems the way some people understand music, naturally, instinctively, with a deep inner sense of how the pieces connected. Within 2 months, she had talked her way into a small NGO in Accra as an unpaid assistant, impressing the director in an interview by identifying 3 errors in a budget report he had placed casually on his desk. He hired her on the spot. From there, she climbed. Not quickly, nothing was quick, but steadily, the way a tree grows. She studied at night. She submitted papers under her new name. She earned a scholarship to the University of Ghana and completed a master's degree in public policy, finishing at the top of her cohort. Her professors described her as someone who understood power, not just from reading about it, but from living near it. They were more right than they knew. By the time she was 30 years old, Mara Asante was no longer a woman starting over. She was a recognized name in West African economic policy. Her research on community-based financial systems had been cited at the African Union. She had spoken at conferences in Nairobi and Dakar and Lomé, and it was this reputation, built brick by careful brick over 5 years, that brought her to the attention of the Royal Development Council of the Asante Kingdom in Ghana. King Kwame Boateng was not what she expected. She had spent enough time near powerful men to know their patterns. The way they took up space, the way they spoke over others, the way their confidence was really just a comfortable habit of never being challenged. But King Kwame was different. He was Oxford educated. Yes, and he carried himself with the natural ease of someone born into leadership. But in meetings, he listened. He asked questions he did not already know the answers to, and when Mara sat across from him in a budget review session and directly challenged a spending proposal that 3 of his senior ministers had already approved, he did not silence her. He leaned forward and asked her to explain further. That was the moment, though neither of them knew it yet. Their relationship grew the way good things grow, without force. First it was professional respect, then genuine friendship, then something quieter and deeper that neither of them named for a long time. Mara kept her past carefully folded away, but one evening, sitting on the steps of the council building after a long meeting, she told him a version of the truth. She told him she had come from a difficult situation, that she had left a life that was not hers, that she had rebuilt herself from nothing. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said only, "Then everything you are, you built yourself. That is not a small thing." She had not expected those words to affect her so deeply, but they did. A year after she joined the Royal Council, King Kwame announced before the full court that he wished to formally recognize Mara Asante as his queen consort. The announcement came, not at some private dinner, but in the open hall of the royal court, in front of elders and ministers and family. He gave her the choice, publicly, in front of everyone, to accept or decline. There was no arrangement, there was no pressure, there was only a man asking a woman if she was willing. She was willing. The coronation was held on a warm Thursday evening. Amara, no longer hiding behind silence or carefully chosen words, stood in the royal courtyard wearing ivory and gold, a ceremonial crown, placed gently on her head by the eldest council elder. The title given to her was Ohema, Queen Consort. She stood in the golden light and felt, for the first time in her adult life, that she was exactly where she had chosen to be. The photographs from that evening were beautiful. They moved through West African society circles the way beautiful things do. Shared, admired, discussed. And 6 weeks later, in a private office in Abuja, a man who never forgot a face stared at one of those photographs for a long time. King Nwosu had aged. His hair had gone gray at the temples, but his eyes were still sharp, and the woman in the photograph, even in a different name, even in a golden crown, was a face he recognized immediately. He said nothing to anyone in the room. He simply set the photograph down and made a private phone call. His envoys arrived in Accra 2 weeks later, requesting a private audience with the Ohema on a personal matter. Amara received the message and felt something move through her chest. Not fear, exactly, but the memory of fear. She sat with it for a moment, then she made her decision. She requested the meeting be held in the formal reception hall of the palace, with King Kwame present and 3 council members in attendance. If Nwosu's people wanted to speak to her, they would do it in the open. The envoy delivered the message smoothly, the way trained messengers do. The Alpha King extended his greetings. He wished her well. He hoped she might consider returning to Nigeria for a quiet conversation. He would, the envoy said carefully, be very generous. The room was completely silent. Amara looked at the envoy with calm, clear eyes and formally declined. She said it was not the right time, and that she was quite settled in her current responsibilities. She thanked the envoy for making the trip. That was not enough for Nwosu. 2 weeks later, he came himself. He arrived in Accra without announcement, staying at a private residence, and sent a handwritten note requesting a personal meeting. Amara read the note twice. Then she agreed, but on her terms, in a formal reception room, not alone. When they were finally in the same space after nearly 6 years, it was strange how ordinary it felt. He looked at her the way people look at something they once owned and lost. He asked her why she had run. He told her she had been meant for great things, and that he had wanted to give her a great life. She did not raise her voice. She did not remind him of the 3 years she had spent in his house feeling invisible. She simply looked at him and said, quietly and clearly, "You were right. I was meant for great things. I just needed to find them on my own." He left that afternoon. No demands, no legal threats, no public scene. Just a man walking back to his car with the slow understanding that he had lost something long before he realized it was gone. Amara stood at the window of the reception hall and watched the car drive away. Then she turned around, straightened the gold detail on her sleeve, and walked back to the council room, where 3 ministers were waiting to review the kingdom's new infrastructure proposal. She had work to do. Years later, when a young woman at a conference in Nairobi asked Ohema Amara how she had become who she was, she thought about the question carefully before answering. She thought about the cold night, the small bag, the side gate, the bus, the shelter in Accra, the late-night study sessions, the scholarship, the long climb, the coronation, the golden crown, the man who came looking for her and left with nothing. Then she smiled and said, "I kept moving forward, even when I was afraid, especially when I was afraid." The young woman wrote that down. And somewhere in a busy conference hall, in the middle of a continent full of women who were still finding their way, those words landed like a quiet, steady light.